The distress beacon pulsed weakly through the void, a dying heartbeat in the darkness between stars. Commander Vexthar of the Galactic Rescue Corps had seen thousands of these signals in his 30-year career, but something about this one made his scales prickle with unease. The beacon originated from the outer fringe, a lawless expanse where few dared to venture alone. "Reading the signature now, Commander," his navigator chittered, mandibles clicking nervously. It's a human vessel. Small transport class, the Phoenix Runner." Vexthar's three eyes narrowed. Humans, the galaxy's newest addition to the Council of Sentient Species, barely 2 generations removed from their first contact. Young, reckless, and impossibly stubborn, they had a reputation for going where angels feared to tread, and this one had clearly found trouble. "Prepare for approach," he commanded. "Full shields. We don't know what we're walking into." The Phoenix Runner hung in space like a gutted carcass. Scorch marks blackened its hull, and entire sections had been torn away by weapons fire. 3 Krath Raider vessels drifted nearby, their own hulls dark and lifeless. Whatever had happened here, it had been brutal. "By the ancestors," breathed his tactical officer. "Commander, those raiders—" "They're all dead. Life support failed days ago." "And the human ship?" A pause. "No life signs detected." Vexthar felt his heart sink. Another senseless death in the fringe. He ordered the boarding party to suit up anyway. Protocol demanded they recover any bodies and investigate the scene. Perhaps this human had family who deserved closure. The airlock hissed open, and Vexthar led his team into the wreckage. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across corridors strewn with debris. The air was thin, barely breathable even with their suits. The ship's reactor had been damaged, and judging by the temperature readings, it had been failing for at least 3 standard days. They found evidence of the battle everywhere. Blast marks on the walls, hastily erected barricades, spent ammunition casings rolling in the zero gravity. The human had fought hard. "Commander, you need to see this," called his medical officer from deeper in the ship. Vexthar propelled himself through the narrow corridor to what had once been the cargo hold. His team had gathered around something, their expressions unreadable behind their visors. As he approached, they parted to let him through. The cargo hold was a frozen tomb. Frost covered every surface, and in the center, surrounded by hastily constructed insulation from torn seat cushions and emergency blankets, lay 5 small forms huddled together. At first, Vexthar thought they were dead, but then one of them stirred, whimpering softly. "Predator cubs," his medical officer whispered in disbelief. "Krath predator cubs. They're alive." Vexthar's mind reeled. Krath were the most feared species in this sector. 8-foot-tall apex predators with razor claws and an appetite for flesh. Their young were precious beyond measure, fiercely protected by their clans. These cubs should have been on the raider ships, but instead, there, his tactical officer pointed. The human. She sat slumped against the far wall, frozen solid, her skin blue-white with ice crystals. Her jacket, the standard-issue pilot's coat that humans favored, was gone. Vexthar followed the path of scattered emergency supplies and realized with growing horror what had happened here. The human, this Celine, according to the name patch on her torn shirt, had wrapped the cubs in her coat. She had gathered every scrap of insulation she could find and built them a nest. She had activated a portable heating unit, her emergency survival kit, and placed it in the center of their huddle. And then, as her ship's life support failed and the temperature plummeted, she had sat down against the wall to die. "She saved them," Vexthar said quietly. "The raiders attacked her ship, probably looking for easy prey. But she fought back hard enough to cripple all 3 vessels. When the battle was over, she found these cubs aboard, likely hidden by their mother before she died. And instead of letting them freeze, the eldest cub, larger than the others, lifted its head, its eyes still clouded with youth fixed on Vexthar. The cub made a soft chirping sound and burrowed deeper into the nest, pulling its siblings closer. This one, Kale, Vexthar would later learn his name to be, had kept the others calm through the cold and dark, trusting in the strange warmth the human had provided. "Get them to the medical bay immediately," Vexthar ordered. "Full warming protocols. Contact the Krath clans, tell them we found the cubs from the Razor Wind Raider clan, and recover the human's body. She deserves better than to be left here." As his team carefully extracted the cubs from their nest, Vexthar examined the cargo hold more closely. Celine had torn apart her own emergency supplies to help them, She'd used her last nutrition packs as food for the cubs, though Krath Young couldn't fully digest human rations. She'd programmed the heating unit to run at maximum, knowing it would drain her suit's power faster. Every decision she'd made had been for them, not herself. The galaxy had questioned humanity's place among the stars. They were weak, the critics said. Soft. They lacked natural weapons, tough hides, or impressive physical strength. What could they possibly contribute? But as Vexthar stood in that frozen cargo hold, staring at the nest a dying human had built for her enemy's children, he understood. Humans didn't survive because they were the strongest or the fastest. They survived because when faced with impossible choices, they chose compassion. They chose to save cubs who would grow up to be predators. They chose sacrifice over self-preservation. 3 weeks later, Vexthar attended the memorial ceremony. The Krath clans had come in force, their massive warships forming an honor guard that stretched across the system. Kale stood at the front of the delegation, his siblings beside him, all wearing small pendants made from pieces of Celine's coat. The eldest cub stepped forward and placed a traditional Krath warrior's blade at the memorial stone, the highest honor their species could bestow. She gave us warmth, Kale said, his voice young but steady, when she had none left for herself. The human delegation wept quietly. Celine had no family, just fellow pilots who'd known her as brave and kind. They'd expected a small service. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. The Krath clans, fearsome and proud, bowing their heads to honor a human who'd saved their young. Commander Vexithar watched it all and thought of that frozen cargo hold, of a young woman who'd looked at predator cubs and seen only children who needed help. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember Celine, and they would finally understand what humanity brought to the stars. Not strength, not weapons, but an impossible, irrational, beautiful willingness to sacrifice everything for those who needed help, even if they were meant to be enemies. That, Vexthar realized, was the most terrifying and wonderful thing about humans. They would burn themselves to ash to keep others warm, and in doing so they would change the galaxy forever.